Welcome to the 17th edition of the European Academic Forum here at the new university. It is already the 17th edition, but in fact the first European Academic Forum in the beginning of this new academic year. The European Academic Forums are organized within the framework of the Jean Monnet Chair that has been dedicated by the European Union to the new university in order to research and to dig in the depth and into the problematic of the faltering ethos of pluralism in European Union. One of the countries which has had over the recent years major problems in terms of pluralism, but also in terms of rule of law and democracy has been Poland. For that reason, a lot has been at stake during the recent election that took place on the 15th of October. And those election, that particular election wasn't important just for Poland itself, but also for the European Union. And today we have a great privilege, a great honor, so that we hear about the importance of that election, about the epilogue of the outcome of the election, and what really is at stake and has been at stake in Poland over the past years by those who are the indigenous to the country, basically the actors who work in the field. And as you will see also from one of the candidates in this election, who eventually even won the seat in the Senate. So before we proceed further, let me introduce today's panel. We have, as said, four excellent, distinguished speakers, professors, lawyers, sociologists, political scientists, human rights lawyers, and all of them also public intellectuals in Poland. The first is Professor Adam Podnar, who is a former ombudsman and a professor at the CWSP University in Warsaw, and who stood as a candidate in the election to the Senate in Poland, and not only stood, but as I learned today, he won the seat with a great amount of, with a huge support, more than 600,000 votes in his favor. So it's great, Adam, to have you with us, and we'll be very happy to hear from you about your experience in this election. A second speaker is Adam Czarnota. Adam is a good old friend of the new university, of our research group. He has held various positions in different places of the world, from Australia to Spain, and now he finds himself in Latvia, where he works as a rector of the Riga Graduate School of Law in Riga, Latvia. Adam has written extensively in the field of rule of law, democracy, also constitutional law. So I'm also very happy to have you, Adam, with us. And finally, as we have two Adams, it's also necessary to have two Annas. So we have Professor Anna Śledzińska-Simon from the University of Wrocław, also a very prolific writer, thinker in the field of public law, rule of law, democracy, who was also recently visiting Ljubljana. So it's great, Anna, to have you with us, even though it's just virtually here over Zoom. And finally, the last, but certainly not least, Anna Wojciuk, who is a political scientist working extensively in the field of international relations, based at the University of Warsaw, but who has held a number of very important and influential research positions at different prestigious universities in Europe and elsewhere. Her work is also, she has also done an important work in the field of democracy and rule of law. So we have really four great speakers. And in order not to waste any more time, other than just saying that the audience is warmly invited to pose their question via chat, as you've been used to so far, and I will pick up those questions and pose it to our speakers. But without further ado, let me start with you, Adam Podnar. It it is a rare honor and a rare privilege to have an academic who fought hard for rule of law and democracy, for human rights protection, first as ombudsman, and now being elected as a senator. So first of all, could you give us a little bit of impression? How was it for you over the last few weeks, and how do you see now this political change in Poland? What was at stake for you, and what was at stake politically before this election?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, dear Professor Avbelj, thank you very much for inviting me and for organizing this event. And it seems to me that it is the first scholar event that is happening just after elections in Poland. I think that we didn't have yet time to discuss what happened, especially in this group of people dealing with constitutionalism, populism, autocratism, and other challenges that are facing that we face in contemporary Europe and in the world. So thank you very much for doing this, because I think that the Polish case was the example of, let's say, like problems and this backsliding of democracy. But right now it seems that we are writing a completely new story about what happened in Poland and what is going to happen. To be honest, for me, those elections were, of course, very intensive, that they required a lot of energy, especially because I was running from a district that was embracing 4 quarters of Warsaw, plus all the voters, all the Polish voters residing abroad. So just to give you some impression, between the beginning of September and the beginning of October, I have visited 9 countries altogether in order to have visits in those countries. So it was really intensive time. And also because of the fact that I'm going to represent Polish people residing abroad, it had impact on issues that were selected by me during the campaign. And I will tell you that, to be honest, rule of law is not that much important for them. It is important as a part of, let's say, a certain vision of a country that is democratic, constitutional based, that is, let's say, going like in a direction of a typical democratic country. But I would say that people were not that much interested in details, how it is going to happen. They were rather thinking about some general image, pride of their country. And of course, in some countries, people were very well acquainted with those issues. But for a number of them, there were other issues that were much more important in terms of connection with Poland, like, for example, to what extent so-called Saturday schools teaching Polish language and history operate properly, or whether retired persons coming back from the US are going to be double taxed from their retirement benefits. And that was, it seems to me, much more important issue for many of them than just a regular discussion on the rule of law. But for sure, I think this massive participation of the Polish people, so I would like to say that more or less 74% of the Polish people participated in elections. It is absolute record in any elections in Poland whatsoever. They showed that they are interested in a certain way of development of Poland. And so those elections were not about competition for programs, but rather about, are we going to be still democratic, rule of law, European friendly country, or are we going to move further towards democratic backsliding and the growing authoritarianism? And it seems to me that this selection of those 3 political parties that won elections was to a great extent saying that, yes, we are going to be a democratic rule of law country. But thank you very much for those polls. But I think that in order to understand this dilemma, what is happening, we should look back a little bit into the past. Because why rule of law is so important? Because between 2015 and 2023, this government has made a number of institutional reforms concerning the Constitutional Court, National Council of Judiciary, the Supreme Court and the Prosecutor's Office, Secret Services, that affected the situation of Polish people. And you could feel that this pressure on the judicial independence has created not only a tension with the European Union organs and institutions, not only with the Court of Justice of the EU, but also it created a feeling that your rights could be neglected, could not be respected. And so you could see a number of groups of people that could feel that their rights are violated, like LGBT plus community, women's rights community, people affected by some abusive operation of the prosecutor's office or secret services. And the second problem was that we could observe that this attack on the rule of law constitutes a threat to the general principle that should be binding in any democracy, which is the democratic and legal accountability for your acts and for your negligence. So quite often we had a feeling that, there is another affair, another scandal, and there is basically nobody who is facing responsibility for this. And moreover, that kind of a climate increased even chances to be even much more aggressive in the public discourse by using hate speech, by using hate violence sometimes, but also by simply abusing your position in the structure of power, because there was this growing level of non-accountability for any act. So I would like to say that it is one of those important issues in the context of discussing rule of law. The second interesting point is that please note that starting from 2019, 18, the end of 18, beginning of 19, the European Union institutions played an important role in the Polish politics. Mostly because of the use of the anti-infringement procedure by the European Commission and respective judgments of the Court of Justice of the EU, and later by responding by the Court of Justice of the EU to different preliminary questions asked by Polish judges. At the end of the day, before elections, this process of dismantling judicial independence could be stopped. So it was to a certain extent connected with not, I would say, like the big belief by the ruling party in the rule of law, but rather with the necessity to absorb EU funds coming from the EU Recovery Fund. For example, for last couple of months, we see already the judges that came back to adjudication of cases that are basically once again before the court bench, although some of them were suspended just because of political reasons. Moreover, we could see some institutional reforms made in order to get a consent from the European Commission to absorb EU recovery fund. But interestingly, all those changes did not help the government to get those funds. So I would say the strategy of the government, a little bit resembling Viktor Orban's strategy, which is, I would name it, eat a cake and have a cake at the same time, was not good enough in order to get those funds. So the Commission was not misinformed. The Commission was not, let's say, manipulated enough to transform those funds. And it seems that Commission was basically waiting for the results of elections. So now we have those elections, and those elections showed a great support. And you see here in this result, because the result by those three parties, KO, which is Koalicja Obywatelska, Civic Coalition, Lewica, left-wing party, and Third Way, Trzecia Droga, which is like a coalition of two groups. One is like quite liberal group, and the second is the Polish Peasants Party. Altogether, they have 242 votes, I think, in the lower chamber of the parliament, but they have also 66 votes in the Senate out of 100. So basically, it is the majority that gives you a chance to rule Poland. And moreover, Land Justice Party, together with together with possible coalition partner, which is so-called Konfederacja, kind of a Polish Jobbik, right-wing party or radical right-wing party, it has more or less 212 votes. So this difference of more than 30 votes is, let's say, big enough to form a government, to have a stable parliamentary majority. But interestingly, and here, I come to what is at stake, there are like certain problems. So the first problem is that the ruling coalition would not have neither constitutional majority nor the majority that would enable it to reject vetoes by the Polish president. And Polish president Andrzej Duda is basically loyal to the right-wing camp of the Law and Justice Party. I wouldn't say that he's always loyal, but he may show some level of loyalty from time to time. So the big question is, so that is one problem, and the second problem
maybe
is,
if we still can get to this point, so we'll get to the end, but at the end, more to the end of this talk. So if you don't mind, we would at this stage, or can we move a little bit forward, so to make a step back, if you don't mind?
yeah, of course, yes, please. Sorry.
Yes, because unfortunately we have very limited amount of time, and we are 4 speakers. So thank you very much for presenting. First of all, for explaining how the things actually have come about. What is the genesis of the problematic in Poland? Thank you very much also for commenting upon the results of the Polish election. I have also shared the screen from Politico, so that you can see what was the outcome in 2019 and how things changed in 2023. And Adam has already explained who these political parties are. But now I'd like to hear from you, Anna, Wojciuk. What do these parties actually stand for? Because we as outsiders, we have learned about this objective grip on power by peace, by the dismantling of the rule of law, court packing state institutions, businesses with loyalists. But were there also 2 different visions of Poland at stake, 2 different political visions of Poland? And you have to unmute yourself, sorry.
Yes, okay.
Yes, excellent.
Now, sorry, my computer got frozen for a moment. That's a problem. So we have, of course, there is Law and Justice Party, which is a typical right-wing populist party, typical, similar to Fidesz, similar to other such parties in the regions, and also in a little bit to the populist right in the United States or Brazil. There are a surprising number of similar issues between those parties. So basically, this populism. Sorry, because the problem is that my computer is frozen and I can't see.
We can hear you and see you really well. So
join you again. I'm sorry for that, but I feel I can't do anything with my computer at the moment. So please let me rejoin you, okay? In 3 minutes. Maybe someone else can discuss it now, because I have a technical problem at the moment.
Okay, Anna, no problem. You can do that. Maybe Anna Śledzińska-Simon, would you like to pick up on that point and explaining to our mostly students and the audience what kind of two Polands were at stake in this election?
All right, thank you again for the invitation, Matej, and this is a pleasure. Again, I have a feeling this is one of the first academic seminars that is entirely devoted to Poland. For sure, there will be many more taking different angles. Let me just follow up on what Adam Podnar has said, and I have to say sincere congratulations, because I have always admired his activism as ombudsman, first NGO activist, then ombudsman, and now as a candidate. He just completed the lesson of a proper electoral campaign, and I followed that with great admiration. So I have to say this is a very well deserved but hardly thought struggle for the seats. So congratulations, Adam, for representing also the academic in the Senate and the legal position. I really very much hope that this will be a place where you can realize your public mission, so to say. So to follow up on what Adam has presented as rule of law problem, that is not necessarily at the heart of people's mind. And I want to say that, again, having a very subjective observation that average citizen in Poland may or is likely to consider the rule of law struggle as something very distant, unless this person is directly affected by a court's proceeding, by the court's proceedings. So as long as you don't have a case in court where you can be actually the victim of the rule of law devastation or backsliding, you can have an impression that everything is going well, that this is some sort of a elite struggle, and I called it in a couple of publications. This is an exchange of the elites. So the populist government simply presented the real people as in contradiction or in opposition to the elite, and one of the elites or members of the elites were the judiciary, members of the judiciary, but also lawyers, feminists, you could say, LGBT movement. So there were a couple of categories that the populist government of the peace or law and justice coalition or coalition led by law and justice in the previous parliamentary terms, they presented those categories, social categories, as the enemy of the people. And I would say, in fact, as I see reaction of various people that are not necessarily representing the field of law or academy. The rule of law problem is maybe distant to those, but what they really see as a struggle is a kind of, ideological struggle, is definitely identitarian struggle, and is a struggle for dignity. And talking to, pensioners, members of family members with, let's say, children, they notice that, you could say, economic change that came with direct social transfers that were granted first in such considerable amounts by the Law and Justice Coalition. So what they kind of count, regardless of the problems with various individual freedoms, what they really count is the direct transfers that come every month to the family budget or home budget. And in that regard, I have to say that this is the dignitarian program that the coalition presented in the first campaign. This was the child's benefits and then various benefits for the pensioners. They were necessary for mobilizing these groups as potential voters. And this direct transfers, they made kind of a new social contract between the government that could do everything until basically people felt that dignity is at stake. And the moment when the dignity of the people were at stake, and now the people as the nation, you could say, not only women as part of the nation, where the abortion, you could say, reforms or the attempt to introduce a total abortion ban, and then later through the parliamentary work, but then later de facto introducing this almost a total abortion ban through judgment of the Constitutional Court. And in that regard, the thousand marching in various streets in Poland in the so-called Black Monday or Black protest, this was the moment where the people felt they were treated, they were treated not subjectively as subjects, and they were simply their dignity and the dignity of women was taken away. So I would say, as long as people felt taken care of through the social programs, but at the same time, we have to notice that many things go unnoticed, because these social transfers, they resulted in de facto, you could say, filtering the public money from the public sector, or redirecting public money from the public sector, that resulted in fact in privatization of care, this privatization of these services, like private, that led to increasing number of people who use private education, private healthcare, private pension system. So the money that has been redirected, I'm not even talking about the budgetary discipline, so how much money has been redirected to special funds, including special funds that was basically helping the church to remain an important actor and still property owner. So this type of struggle for dignity is something that I see as a main, at the heart, not really the rule of law. Of course, we will perhaps discuss what is at stake in the rule of law crisis, but I would say at stake in the politics of Poland as of today is the struggle for dignity of people who on the one hand, they require care and attention, and they require to be treated subjectively and with seriousness. And we may not say that the voters of peace, of the Law and Justice Party, are stupid or manipulated. They are firm believers in the values represented by this party. This is my position. And only the pragmatic voters that, for some reasons, let's say economic crisis, some other elements that they took into account, that led them to change their political sympathies. But in my opinion, the voters for the current government party, they are true followers of the ideology and of the intrinsic program that includes social transfer benefits, but again has perhaps this destructive effect on public sector services that I mentioned. And definitely my last sentence on this round is that this is also a struggle for identity. Are we part of Europe, or we are part of authoritarian bloc or regime? So I stop here, and thank you for.
Thank you, Anna. That's a really good touchstone for get Anna Śledzińska to get Anna Wojciuk back into discussion. Now your computer, I think, is no longer frozen.
Yes, now it's much
so
better.
would you agree what Anna has just said? So there's, it's a dignitarian struggle, it's an identitarian struggle. Poland with more European or more authoritarian, and if so, tell us how to bridge the gap between the believers of the one political party and those who have pragmatically switched to the other bloc now.
Yeah, so definitely there it is an identitarian struggle, but also I would like to add to what Adam and Anna have already said, that actually this time the rule of law was more important than I would expect, because looking at the data from the exit poll, number one issue for the voters from all the parties was economic situation and the huge inflation which we had, and which also decreased the effect of social benefits, because the benefits were not getting higher with inflation. So a lot of voters were dissatisfied that actually prices are going up and the benefits are not going in the same direction. So definitely the economic situation was it was for many voters very important, and it's 28%. But the next group is the group for whom the women rights were the most important, and it's 16.5%, number one issue. So that's a lot of people, and then almost the same amount, the same amount of people put judiciary and rule of law as the most important issue. So you have 33% of voters for whom broadly understood human rights, rule of law were very important. And I think this is a difference with previous elections, where Polish non-governmental organizations and those who were fighting for a rule of law in Poland were not able to show to the voters that this issue is very important. I think we can see change here, because we have 1/3 of those who go voting for whom this is in the center. Yes, and also you have in the center the idea of getting back to the EU and having our relations with the EU much better, which is also connected with human rights and rule of law. So I think that, of course, economic situation is roughly 1/3, and then there's 1/3 somehow connected with the rule of law, and then you have issues like security, Polish relations with Russia, war in Ukraine, immigration. So, but these are much lower. So I think this is a big success of Polish civil society, that after 8 years, this effort had finally a result. And also, if you look at the dynamic of campaign and mobilization, there were many campaigns which were mobilizing women and young people to vote. And apparently, because of this turnout, which was so huge, this was successful. So I think that we can, yes, maybe when you meet particular voters, maybe it's not the most important issue they ask about, but when you look at the polls, and this is particularly the exit poll, for many voters, this issue was important, because I think that they understood that it's our presence in the EU. These are their fundamental rights and freedoms, which will be in danger, because we had also this Pegasus surveillance scandal. So people started to understand that eventually it may become dangerous for them. And this is how I see it. So my conclusion will be that it was more important than I would expect 2 weeks ago, to be honest. And when you look at the voters from the opposition, for them, what was the most important are the relations with the EU and the post-COVID funds. But there is also accountability of law and justice, which is very high, particularly among a civic platform and the third wave voters, for whom it's very important. So they want independent judiciary, they want independent prosecutors, they want to make the previous government accountable. And then there is yes, and so these things are on the top. So I think that for the voters, after 8 years, indeed, the elections were about those issues which we are discussing today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. So these were really content-based elections. People really voted on things that were extremely important. And the fight over the last years apparently has really also increased the public awareness and civic awareness about the importance of these matters that are not just elite matters and not just of interest to us academics.
Exactly.
Adam Czarnota, you already indicated at the beginning, also having known your work, you always had a little bit of a dissenting opinion on the situation in Poland. So I'd really like to welcome your view on what has been just discussed and on the outcome of this election.
Thank you, Matej, for the invitation. Yeah, indeed, but I have to make some reservation. I've been living abroad for many years, so my perception is as a sort of the interested but observant from outside. I am very glad that Adam will represent me as a person living abroad in the Senate, right? And I hope that there will be a proper representation as an independent senator. Like, one of the questions you asked here when you send these 3 teams for us was sources of division, right? And when I thought about it, and I think that Adam mentioned it started in 2015. And it seems to me it started much earlier than 2015. It was already visible in the solidarity movement, right? It means, okay, movement was unified. But at the same time, there were deep division, ideological division, but not only. Division connected with interests of the particular groups within the movement and also within the regions as such. What the election confirmed, actually, it seems to me, when you look at the results, the voting patterns in the particular regions of Poland, there is a deep division between the urban and rural area. PiS won in rural areas, and it was a big win, actually. And then, so what is the issue? It seems to me what is at issue is a modernization versus some sort of the conservative version of modernization. Not against modernization, but a different path of modernization. So let's call the first one, it means modernization, cosmopolitan type of modernization. Let's join, became a, like they say, it's not a sociological category, normal European country. At the same time, what the PiS presented is a different path to modernization. And then the politics of distribution. Anna mentioned here this dignity type of the approach. And it seems to me the dignity actually started in the 2015. Since the 1989 in Poland, each government had some programs, including social policies. After election, none of them, including the left, introduced these programs. The first party which did it actually was PiS. It means Law and Justice Party. And what does it mean? And there was a lot of regions and also social groups which were totally excluded, communicatively excluded, socially excluded. And PiS simply won them. Now situation changed. Why it changed? Because not only politics of distribution play important role, but also, as was mentioned by my colleagues before, the politics of identity. And what I expect in the future, it means after the formation of new government, that one of the battlefields in Poland will be precisely about this politics of identity. There are two different streams. What PiS presented before was a politics of identity for the nation as such, right? It means a holistically perceived. When what we see, there is a much more divisions, and the particular groups are fighting for recognition, to be recognized as a citizens. This is a part of this dignity, it seems to me, approach. So that's the first question. I also want to address the question was about the democratic backsliding before we move to the rule of law. And I disagree. It seems the last election shows that democracy in Poland is an extremely robust democracy, right? It means one, and it looks like that transfer of power maybe will be not easy, but nevertheless it will happen soon. So therefore, why it happened? It seems to me that all those actions after 2015 done by the Law and Justice Party simply trigger the citizenship approach. That's maybe a paradox. But if you look before, there was rather demobilization of citizens. Don't participate in the public life. After 2015, the participation in public life, there was a growth in the participation, marches, protests, and so on, so on. So it seems to me that I am totally against this notion, democratic backsliding. It was backsliding in the rule of law, but not in a democracy in Poland. And I stop at the moment, maybe later on the further questions, different topics.
Right. So I would continue with the rule of law debate, right? Because I take it, I understand that there is a deep, let's say, political division, or maybe a division of almost a Kulturkampf about the identitarian politics. So that a certain political party works on the identity of the nation, sovereignty, all of that we know from the sovereignist repertoire, and the other is, as you say, the other side is more cosmopolitan, etc., etc. But my question is this just a political smokescreen for, I don't know, for the economic self-enrichment of particular actors? Because all of those rule of law abuses that have taken place, and they have been objectively documented, seem to point that they are not that what was actually at stake was not that was not pursuing one or another big narrative about the Polish future, but was really about power. It was really about power and putting our people in place in order to control this society. So this leads us back to the question: so how deep is actually this rule of law crisis? If we agree that the rule of law crisis has actually forced people to be more democratically active, how deep has in fact peace gone in dismantling the rule of law? Who would like to pick up this bone of contention?
All right,
Adam, would you?
Me or Adam Podnar?
Yeah, maybe you, and then I will invite Adam Podnar back because he wanted to already start a little bit of thinking how to undo the situation. Adam, Czarnota.
All right. Legal sociologists in Poland, they conducted for years research, empirical research on the prestige of courts. And if you look at the data, it means what was done by the Adam Kurczewski, right, and let's say Maria Borucka-Karstowa in Kraków, right? It was the prestige of courts in Poland. It was extremely low, really. And then, so this is information number one. Information number two is such that what's happened is not only low prestige of courts, but each government, basically, since the beginning of the 90s, had in the program a reform of judiciary, which all of this government fail, never succeed, which it seems to me shows us there was a deep structural problem in the administration of justice in Poland. Peace also fall in this battle in the reform of judiciary. Okay, it was totally wrongly done. That's I agree fully. But it seems to me that there is a need really to change. From my external point of view, what's happened actually, that corporatist structure in judiciary was extremely visible and present, right? And it seems to me that reform, this done by Ziobro since 2015, forced actually quite big part of judiciary to rethink their relation to the citizens. It means they discover at the one moment that they're supposed to serve citizens, not themselves, but citizens as such. And what I worry now, it means after this last election, is voices of revenge, right? It means that revenge against neo-judges, right, and so on. What should be in the center is a thinking about what is good for citizens. So what sort of reform actually should be implemented to bring back this independence of judiciary? For sure, not status quo ante, because the status quo ante was something absolutely wrong, really. And so what to do? I have no idea. I never thought about a blueprint for those reforms. But the new government should really think seriously about what to do, and for sure not accept the already drafted, future statutes done by judiciary or the legal profession only. They should be much more broader consultation, which include not only legal profession, not only judiciary, but other segments of society. And a crisis of rule of law, for sure, it exists. It means it's not only that the reforms made something wrong, because they did, but also politicization of judiciary from the other side. It means when I read interviews with judges, they are extremely arrogant, the first one, and the second, full of politics, when they shouldn't present their political opinion in the public sphere, right?
Thank you, Adam. And now going back to Adam Podnar, whom I interrupted, not in too nice way before, but you already indicated a couple of obstacles that the new government might face on its path to reform the situation. And I still like to insist on the point that we keep this for the last round. So here I'd like to invite you to say a word or two how you would react to Adam Czarnota's objection. So, because I think it's also important before any kind of reform is started, it's good to have some sort of an, if not perfect, but then at least overlapping consensus on the diagnosis of the state of affairs in the country. So, what would you say to what Adam Czarnota had just said?
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you. First, maybe I would like to respond to your question, because I think it is a valid question to what extent this ideological background was a motivation for changes and how it has been used by the ruling party in order to create the system of governance. I think that there is something in it. I think that it was not just a pure drive for power, but this, let's say, conservative Christian traditional motivation based on this, politics of identity was used as a justification to make some of those reforms, but more, I would say, it was a way to cement and to create kind of a glue for a new political elite, which means that this system of government, which the authoritarian system, cannot operate just on the basis of the motivation of 1 to 50 persons that are in the government, in the parliament. You must create like a much bigger group of people that are believing or that are at least subscribing to the same set of values. And Jarosław Kaczyński was basically projecting that he's a little bit kind of a building new Sanacja. Sanacja was like this group of people governing Poland in the interwar period between 1926 1939, and there was a big dream of Kaczynski just to create like a new group of, let's say, 10,000 people that are connected with each other, that are in a very direct relationship with each other, and the Catholic Church and the reference to traditional values is playing a certain role in this connection between themselves, because it is a little bit justifying their effort, but it is also creating certain bonds of loyalty between all of them. And in my opinion, it would still play the role, and I think the book by Anna Wojciuk and Maciej Kisielowski and Antoni Dudek about the new social contract is basically about this, that we'll have it still. But the question is to what extent the new ruling coalition may build an alternative, like and it was a little bit like a discussion, and I think that was the result of success for Trzecia Droga, the third way, that they said, you can be a Catholic, you can, but you can still believe in democratic values. It doesn't mean that you must follow all those different strange autocratic thoughts and ideas of Kaczynski. You may be in favor of reforming judiciary, but not necessarily in a way of subordinating this judiciary. So the question is, to what extent this new narrative, especially concerning the people that are in the center or are, let's say, in the right center, could be promoted. I will just give you an example, maybe using my own case. By some people, I'm regarded in Poland as a typical like a leftist guy, okay, like a really this guy on the left, or even sometimes on the far left. But at the same time, I got quite prestigious awards that were given by the Catholic left-wing organizations. So they kind of saw in me that I have this kind of ability of making a dialogue. But so the big question for future is how to do things. And in my opinion, the only solution to not to get back into the problem, into those problems of polarization, is not only to avoid, let's say, constitutional traps and cementing of institutions with different institutional, with different methods. Like, for example, that the Constitutional Court is taken over and you cannot do anything without taking into account the position of the politically biased Constitutional Court. I think that the important point is that those reforms concerning country should embrace also some kind of a vision that we are the one nation, one society, that all those reforms should be addressed to everyone and not just to those people that just won elections. So, for example, I see that like open government, different methods of participation of citizens in decision making, competitions for different public positions, transparency of procedures. It is one of the most important ways of kind of showing that this government could be different than the previous one. And also it is one of the methods in order to create this kind of an opening for all the citizens, and also a little bit acknowledging that before 2015, not everything was perfect. And it is this moment when we, I think, meet with Professor Czarnota, because I don't claim that everything was perfect before 2015. If it was like this, if it would have been like this, I would not be the human rights lawyer before 2015. And basically, I was quite a busy person at that time. But simply, so the question is, what kind of methods are used, and whether this new government would have some kind of a modesty and understanding that that something different is required from them than just pure power, pure opportunity to control a situation in a country. And when it comes to the judiciary, it means also that judiciary should not only be reformed from the institutional point of view, but also you should spend a lot of time on bringing more efficiency to justice sector, and also more accountability to the local accountability of courts towards population, especially local population. And you know, this book by Anna, maybe I will tell you one thing. It has also, among many different things, there are like very nice, interesting, like specific chapters with ideas what to do. I will just give you one example. Like, let's imagine that one of the things that is doable in Poland is that every court is presenting every year a report from its activity to the local council. Just like this, you know, without, and it's just giving this for the discussion. So, dear councillors, this year we had so many car accidents, okay? And there were so many drunk drivers, and basically maybe you should know about it because you may do something with it. Maybe, you know, there is something wrong here, not only with, you know, drinking, but with the condition of roads, or another, you know, there are a number of burglaries in this region, and maybe, you know, there is something wrong here with the police, we can do something with it. So please note, we didn't have any discussion whatsoever, like thinking about a judge that is appearing in a local council and saying, you know, we had cases like this in the previous year, seems like an abstract issue. So creating this connection between different institutions is one of the things that we should do in the new times of Poland. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Anna, Wojciuk, Adam kept referring to your book, and apparently it also contains some of the solutions for the future. So, in a nutshell, maybe if you touch a little bit on the diagnosis. That Adam Czarnota said that even before, not everything had been okay. And since we are getting now to the last part of our talk, about the future. So what could or should be done?
Yes, so thank you for all your kind words. And indeed, our diagnosis is that Poland and Polish people are very diverse. And we are genuinely, some of us are deeply conservative, and some of us are very progressive. And thus this amplitude is really high, and that it's very hard to govern a state only based on centralized policy, because this common denominator in daily in policies which concern daily lives of people, this denominator is really low. I mean, with what kind of education, what kind of approach to I don't know, to traditional family, and of course there are basic human rights, and those things should be common for all of us. But also there is space for some diversity, and we believe that decentralizing some policies so that they can better fit the values present in different regions of Poland may make this conflict less intense. And those values, they are very deep. It's not only for whom we vote, but if you look at the statistics concerning children born out of wedlock, number of divorces, you can see Southeast Poland being very conservative and Northwest being very progressive. So it's deep. It's not only support for political parties. And we believe also that given this internal diversity, even if we are, all of us tend to be white and Christian or from Christian tradition, actually there is a lot of diversity, more than we sometimes are ready to acknowledge. So this is point number one. Point number two is that in order to stop this internal war, this this very costly conflict, we also need a kind of new social contract. And Adam mentioned some of our ideas about how we could take into account ideas coming from the conservative side, the ones Adam Czarnota mentioned, for example. Yes, this court, the judges are more socially sensitive, yes, and which was one of the important points raised by the conservative side. And we believe you can see it in all social studies that actually people think it's true. So why not address it? Of course, within a democratic system, and democratic framework allows for many such concessions, which can also acknowledge the reasonable and justified ideas of the conservative side. So yes, I do agree with Adam Podnar that we need the conservative parties which will be democratic, and it's so important. But also you need to address, in order to strengthen them, you need to have a constitutional solutions which will fit into the needs and interests of the conservative side of population. So I'm very afraid of any kind of now progressive backlash, which will make our system unstable in, I think, a very long perspective, because this conservative side is strong, is deep there. And here I would after agreeing with Adam Czarnota on his diagnosis about the maybe insufficient sensitivity of the judges in the past to social needs, I strongly disagree with his diagnosis that Polish democracy was not attacked. I think that if Law and Justice succeeded in closing TVN, the TV station, and with the Lex Tusk law, which would allow them to disqualify some of the important politicians from the opposition, I don't think the opposition could win elections, especially TVN, the major TV, or the oppositional TV. This is what differs in Hungary and Turkey and Poland. Then in those countries, there's no single important TV station, because like single newspapers or news portals, that's not enough. It's not enough resources. It's not enough. So this was crucial. And the Polish system of checks and balances could not stop it. This is American embassy which stopped it. And I think this is a failure of Polish constitutional system of checks and balances, that ultimately our democratic system was kept here by Ambassador Mark Brzeziński, whose constitutional role in Poland was really substantial in last years. So I think that if we have this opportunity to rebuild democracy, I think we should think about the system which would be harder to be destroyed, because like Polish system of checks and balances was really destroyed in 2 years. It was not prepared for a party getting in power, the party which would get there to abolish democracy. It I think assumed that all the players will more or less play according to the rules. And I think now lessons learned is that you should really develop a system which would be more resilient, even taking into account actors which would get there to destroy it. So I am much more pessimistic. And actually, if you look at turnout, Law and Justice got roughly the same number of votes, minus 500,000. And you have to remember that during those 4 years, 1 million voters just passed away, because we are aging society, and also 200,000 people died of COVID. And this is more affecting Law and Justice. So actually they didn't lose any voters statistically, other than those who passed away. So they didn't lose support. What worked in those elections was that the Democratic side was able to do really an amazing job in activating social networks. And this would be impossible without this major oppositional TV station and with huge effort of civil society. And this was so difficult. It was so difficult. It was such a huge effort. I think in a normal democracy, you shouldn't expect from the citizens so much effort in order to change government. This was amazing. This was extraordinary, but it was more than you normally expect in a democracy to get rid out of bad government. Thank you.
Anna, Wojciuk, thank you very much for this very interesting perspective. Myself learned a lot from this. Anna Śledzińska-Simon, you already mentioned in your previous chance to talk the women's rights, the rights of minorities, especially the still existing government in Poland has used the neuralgic point of abortion to divide the society basically further and to clamp on this right. So I wonder, since you've done a lot of work on that, how do you see this will unfold now in the future? Will it be possible to find, even in a deeply divided country, which is tilting towards a conservative side, and it might be much more conservative than even other Central Eastern European countries, could we find sort of overlapping consensus about abortion, about LGBT rights, so that people would say, well, this is right, it should be done in this way, and it's not taking anything from anyone, irrespective of our own ideological views on that? Do you think this kind of a reconciliation is possible?
Thank you, Matej, for this question. I want to say that in addition to women that are clearly the victims of the current, let's say, regime that fades away of the Law and Justice, in addition to women, there is a couple of other groups, social groups, or you could say minorities in the system. So in that regard, I could follow on what Adam Czarnota has said, that democracy was pretty robust, but as long as we define democracy as a majority rule, when we define democracy as a regime where minority rights are respected, but in that regard, women's rights as a minority in that historical way that they are not equally represented, or they were easily outvoted, or in that case, decisions have been made in the Constitutional Court, where the only way to react was to go on the streets and protest, but not only as women, but as a nation with many generations represented in this massive protest. So in addition to women, as I started, there are judges who are clear victims of the regime. So there are now stories, and it's part of Polish history of repression, political repression against judges as such, as called as caste, and a special group that is corrupt and inapt to, again, tolerate to the society. But the judges who have been suspended, who have been subject to hate campaigns, or who have been intimidated, harassed, who have been object of, you could say, collective effort by certain state agents of destroying their individual careers, but also of their peaceful coexistence in the society, but also of their family members. So there are a number of judges who have paid the price of the individual devotion to the rule of law and democracy in Poland. I would also mention sexual minorities and the fight with the LGBT community and its presence in the public sphere that was ongoing, and with the culmination point, you could say, or an apex, by in a moment where several municipalities adopted laws or adopted resolutions that held the municipality terrain as a LGBT-free zone, and the fight, including the fight of the Ombudsman office, held at the time by Adam, but also following by his predecessor. This was a fight for finding these resolutions as invalid because of the very violation of the very right to dignity, but also equality. But I would say the society as such, and a future society to some extent, was also the victim of the regime when we consider climate changes or unaddressed problems, including deforestation and energy policies. The society as such is still struggling with manipulation and a very, you could say, hateful communication that comes from the public media, hateful presentation of the migration as a threat to the, you could say, existence of the nation, not only to the core values of Christianity and you could say traditional values, but this seems like a existential struggle, the migration that comes from Arabic countries. So that type of communication is spread by the public media, and definitely dealing with these issues now it becomes an opportunity for, and this is something that I want to emphasize, the coalition partners of the future government are coming from similar pro-European forces, but I would say there are clear differences in the individual programs on particular issues. There seems to be a consensus on the opening of the access to abortion up to the first 12 weeks after conception, but at the same time, not everything has been said on that issue. So again, restoring our so-called abortion consensus that led to still very restrictive law of 1993 would be, I would say, problematic, so as restoring rule of law in the same status quo ante position, to basically undoing the reforms that did so much harm to the institutions. So I would say this is not to underestimate the power and the representation of the Law and Justice Party in the government. This would be still a very important player with still very important social support, including the Catholic Church that again wants to preserve its status quo and very privileged position. I would also say religious minorities or people who don't have any religious views but declare as agnostic or non-believers. They had been definitely subject to certain oppression, especially if they wanted to limit the power of the Catholic Church by revealing the affairs within the church, but also representing different views in, let's say, with the symbolic but also artistic expressions, such as, let's say, rainbow flag surrounding the holy figures of Maria, or representing the rainbow flags in contrast to, or in conjunction with religious symbols, and they have been subject to criminal sanctions due to the understanding that this is now the religion that is at stake, and we want to protect the rights of the majority and the subjective feeling of the majority. So that type of rhetoric, but also concrete legal actions, they have first of all divided the society, but shrank the space for civil activism. But at the same time, this huge mobilization for the bottom-up rule of law, for the bottom-up democratic engagement and participation, that is the capital that we should not lose. Lose in the political fight for particular political goals. So I think that the new government comes into power in a very specific moment where they can actually take the energy and this mobilization in hand, and include those very active civic and social organizations that campaign for activism of women, or active engagement of women in the elections, because this is again a record number, not only of the whole nation, but of women especially, who we calculate that they were not so active in previous elections, and now the mobilization from the very early age, so young women, but also women who had an interest in changes not only of the reproductive rights, but also there are other current pending issues regarding protection against violence or definition of rape. So there are a lot of challenges that the coalition shall address, but at the same time, the ideological divide remains within the coalition. So to find a proper solution can be only done in communication with the society.
Good, and that's now precisely my question for the last round. And here I will also bring in the question that our colleague Jernej Littner-Černič, a professor at the university, also typed into our chat room. And it's all now about, and I will boast a little bit about the book that Adam Podnar is one of the editors of, that we produced at Max Planck Institute in Heidelberg, thinking of what's going to be next. So how to ensure the keystones to pave the way to a veritable constitutional democracy. And since we have in Poland, and since we have just a little bit of time left, I'd like to ask, and since Adam Czarnota has already said that he fears the revenge, retaliation, that could, instead of taking Poland, and we did Europe, because Poland is one of the most important European member states. A robust constitutional democracy in Poland is quintessential for the future, for a veritable future of the European Union. So if this kind of transition 2.0 fails in Poland, and we end up again in a transition 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, it will be also very bad for the European project. So my question now is, what's your prediction? What will happen next? Do we end up in retaliatory practices, or will the new government be really able also to exercise self-restraint in insisting on the red lines, that those who have crossed them will have to pay for that, also in terms of criminal, civil, and other political accountability, but then putting in place the conditions in which, in a way, the huge gaps, the huge divisions in the Polish society will be mended, so the country will be able to travel in the same boat, even though with very different people on board. And maybe we'll start with Adam Podnar, then Adam Czarnota, Anna Wojciuk, and Anna Śledzińska to conclude this round.
Thank you, Matej. I think this issue of accountability, or some people say revenge, is an important one. And to be honest, in the public discourse, I try to avoid as much as possible word like revenge, or because in my opinion, using this word is in fact kind of an indirect weapon not to face any accountability for those who committed simply constitutional or criminal deeds over the last 8 years. So what would we hear like this? Oh, you know, those new guys, they are just going to make witch hunting and revenge towards us, how bad they are. They shouldn't do it because it is all about, you know, power play and revenge. You know, it is not like this, and it shouldn't be like this, and nobody plans to do it like this even. Simply, if you are living in a situation when for 8 years you had numerous examples of abuse of the constitution and simple legal procedures, misuse of public funds, which is confirmed by hundreds of reports, statements, audit committee statements, I don't know, ombudsman reports, NGOs reports, you cannot just say that nothing happened. You cannot just say that these were kind of, you know, some people from Mars that were doing this. These were like real people who took not only personal advantage out of this, but sometimes even quite significant financial advantage out of all those processes that happen in Poland. So, which means that you should use procedures that are provided in the constitution, that are provided in the criminal law, in the rules of the lower chamber, which is, I mean, rules, for example, concerning investigative committees, in order to hold people accountable for what they did, because for 8 years they were not facing almost any accountability. And I think that is simply what happens in any constitutional state, because it means the respect to constitutional values. But I would like to underline that it is not about political motivation, but it is about respect for rules. And also you have to take care about doing everything in accordance with fair trial guarantees. So in a procedural way that is fully compliant with how you should do it in a constitutional state. So of course, I'm against any kind of a revolutionary type of tribunals or establishment of some new institutions. But I think, you know, you should basically do this in a proper way. Moreover, I will tell you that when I was meeting voters over last weeks, one of the most frequent questions was like this: you cannot do the same thing as you did in 2007 when Zbigniew Ziobro, Minister of Justice, who was accused of for a number of things when he was for the first time Minister of Justice, was basically could not face accountability before the Tribunal of State. It was kind of a political decision at that time, but simply people still remember this, that it happened, that it creates like this feeling of impunity, and simply we have to avoid it. Okay, so, you know, I will be the first one who would acclaim the previous government for good things. Today I was talking in television about quite a positive policy for a number of months towards Ukraine. I think that President Duda, because of his position towards Ukraine, has a good chance of making international career after finishing his term of the president. But at the same time, I remember that he sworn in improperly judges of the Constitutional Court, and I'm not the one who would tell that nothing happened in 2015 or 2016 when he was justifying different controversial judicial reforms. So I don't think that it would create like a need for another form of retaliation in a situation when you do it in a proper, fully legally compliant way. You simply have to do it in order to create respect towards the Constitution and the law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam Podnar. Adam, Czarnota.
Well, I fully agree with one reservation. Accountability and responsibility. They are two different concepts. It means if the law was broken, responsibility should work. Accountability is something different. It means usually is in relation to the political accountability. That's a different issue. But I don't want to talk about this. It means I see the problems actually with the implementation or restitution of rule of law in Poland. That's something which really, it seems to me, is a fascinating issue. It means how to restitute the rule of law according to the rules or simply by bending or changing the rules. It means there will be no easy process. Jędrzej asked this question about the specificity, right, of restitution of rule of law in Poland. And it seems to me that there are two roads, actually, and none of them is a good one, believe me, because it seems to me that from the point of view of the social theory, it is impossible to restitute rule of law if you simply stick to the rules, existing rules. On the other hand, to break the rules to restitute rule of law is also something wrong. So what to do? Probably at the moment, nobody has an idea. But specificity is up to the 2025, there will be very difficult cohabitation process, it seems to me, till the President Duda will keep his office, till, let's say, Mr. Glapiński will be the chief of the National Bank, and you know, the National Council of Judiciary also exists, and there is a possibility that, you know, all those breaks are already institutional breaks already exist. So promises, election promises, which were done during the election campaign, they probably won't be fulfilled at least till 2025. So I am looking with optimism that something will be done, but at the same time, I see there are a lot of problems on the road. Thank you.
Anna Wojciuk, so this is not an easy question for you.
So I think that because I agree with Adam Czarnota that you cannot just simply restore the system after such a set of experiences, and that it was virtually hacked. And also, I think that when you rebuild this system, it's very well known how to hack it again. And it was not very, very resilient to this attempt. So I think that it's not enough, even if it's possible, which I think is difficult. But for me, the more strategic solution would be to try to find, especially given that, in fact, there were there are a lot of people in law and justice who broke the law, the constitution. So if those things become public, perhaps, and I hope, there will be some will to cooperate. And I think we would need a new round table. In that round table, maybe some of the people who didn't violate the law seriously, or they didn't violate it at all, can participate in a power sharing agreement in which also the conservative side gets on this leveled playing field, a fair possibility to win next elections and so on, but with this idea of never again. Yes, that you will never again act against the constitution. But in order to have the system as a stable one, it needs to be on the basic level recognized by all serious players. Yes, and this is the challenge. So I think that it would be a wise thing to reach out to those politicians and also local politicians from Law and Justice who are in the core of the party, but who didn't violate the law, and who could also benefit from it. And for sure, there must be some people who will be brought to the court and will be responsible for what happens. So for sure there are cases where you want to see this responsibility happening, and in such cases in other countries also, you can see in the United States, in Brazil, you can see that democracies want to defend themselves against the forces which wanted to destroy democracies. And I think a sound democracy needs to be able to protect itself against those who want to destroy it. But on the other hand, you cannot alienate the part of electorate which wanted to vote for this kind of party. And I think you need to get to the table a part of this political force. And perhaps, given that the amount of illegal things which happened, maybe at some point there will be readiness to make such a deal. But I think that we would have to reach out to the other side. I know it's very difficult, but I think otherwise it will be inherently unstable.
Thank you very much, Anna Wojciuk, for that, and for stressing the importance of stability also for the future. And it's an interesting idea of doing a roundtable again after more than 30 years now. Anna Śledzińska-Simon, do you think we are there now? Or that you will get there to some sort of a national reconciliation that also the other side and both sides will eventually say never again?
Well, I never thought that I would be living through another, you could say, political or legal transition. And this is, of course, a very exciting moment for all of us, constitutional lawyers, but at the same time, we bear the responsibility for whatever decisions will be made and how they will be justified. Because I think what is the most important right now is to gain social legitimacy from any, again, judicial reforms that are in the pipeline, because some of the proposals have been already drafted and they are ready to be basically taken tabled to the speaker of the Sejm. So in that regard, the civil society is ready to bring the proposals. But again, they have been mostly drafted by very narrow group of legal experts, mostly, or those who are active in judicial or judicial self-government. Or judicial associations. So what would be this is the question for me, what would be the social legitimacy of judicial reforms that basically nullify the status of neo-judges, as we call them, judges that have been appointed by politically captured National Council of the Judiciary, whether we should draw, again, a thick line saying that all these judges are basically reinstated in their previous positions, but they lose their current position as judges, except the judges that have been just entering the profession. So the new candidates from the judicial school. So except this category of newcomers, the judges who took advantage of the political change, of the political capture of the judiciary, they all should be reinstated to their previous positions, and they lose their current status or they lose the current position in the judiciary, including the most, you could say, surprising advancement from regional courts to the Supreme Court, or similar career, shocking career advancements. So the question would be whether this thick line and nullifying the position and also enabling the resumption of all the proceedings in which these neo-judges took place, that is basically to some extent the consequence of all the judgments regarding the judicial independence made by the European Court of Human Rights, but also Court of Justice of the European Union. So to consequently follow those judgments would mean we have to introduce this type of reforms. But at the same time, the contrasting view would be, let's look at each and individual judge, see to what extent this person has impeccable character, or did things that we want to draw the responsibility from the actions that do not deserve appraisal or deserve a kind of responsibility or sanction even. So we definitely don't know yet exactly what to do, but we know what not to do. And I would say collective responsibility is one thing that we don't want to do, but at the same time, having some sort of a formal solution that would be not disadvantageous for the society as such, but at the same time with the risk that it will be presented by the losing government or the peace government as a revenge and kind of political cleansing, where rule of law is used as a tool of political cleansing. So I would say we have the opportunity not to restore, but reopen and transform, not as a reset solution, but rather with much bigger maturity or wisdom, but also with very active civil society that actually brought to this electoral victory of the opposition. And I want to mention, because you had one of the questions that you asked, what is the lesson for Europe? You know, the kind of strategic perhaps play that was still not certain a year ago, whether the opposition parties should run from one list, like this was the strategy in Hungary. But in this case, they decided to run each from a separate list. But in the end, together they have the majority to and are able to form the government. So again, this is a solution that has to be measured in each political context. But the lesson that we have is that this huge mobilization of all the voters, the youngest generation, certain categories of voters who have been at particular disadvantage, like women, the mobilization of those, but at the same time, the three lists leaving the voters' actual choice as to the particularly nuanced program and agenda, you could say, because the agenda of the leftist and agenda of the third way is very different, I would say, is very different. At least this is my perception. Thank you very much again for this inspiring debate.
Thank you very much, Anna, also for your perspective and for, in a way, summing up what has been said, and also sharing some good, let's say, strategic election advice, what to do in similar situations in the future. So I have to admit that that we have been very privileged to have you with us. As you all insisted, this was one of the very first scholarly debates on the aftermath of the Polish election. Most of you are extremely busy. Adam Podnar already had to leave, and we are especially grateful to him that he took time and to join us in today's discussion. There is so much yet to be done. There are very, very many challenges in front of Poland. Slovenia and the rest of Europe will be observing, and we are hoping that the things turn out right, so that we just get a very formidable constitutional democracy in Europe, which will in Poland, which will also make the European Union a more robust, more viable constitutional polity, because we will need it for all the challenges that are now on the horizon. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope that we see each other also soon in person. All the best.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
Very much.
Thanks, Matej.
Thanks.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, ciao.